Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, music team. I'm always amazed that I don't think you could ever plan things the way God does when you try to sit down and figure things out. Brendan and I talked 2 nights ago about what songs. And I just said, well, we're going to be talking about aroma, and I gave him a couple of passages in Ephesians. I said, you figure it out. It'll be right. And some of the songs, it's just like, okay, couldn't have picked that any better than that. So it's just always interesting. And that kind of goes along with what I'm going to speak about today. I had in my mind, it was a couple months ago, one of our friends stopped by and we had a conversation in the kitchen table, got talking about aroma, and he said, as Christians, what aroma do we have with people around us? And that word always stuck to me. And I was kind of like, when Pastor Peter asked me to speak on it, I said, okay, came up again in my mind. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to speak about. And I started making this up and going in one direction, and all of a sudden I kind of got to a certain point, and it was like putting things together. I was like, nope, I'm not going that direction. I'm going a totally different direction. So it's interesting how God works that way. This morning, I just want to say welcome everybody here. If you're visiting, hope you feel at home in our church family. This is a great family, and we're glad everybody's here this morning. I was telling Pastor Ron this morning, too, wish we went back to the days where they had the pulpits that were 6 feet wide and 5 feet tall. They had something to hang on to, right? Nobody could see you shaking and being nervous about stuff. Good smells. Everybody has them. They're like music. They trigger, right? Memories, things that happen in your life. For me, a couple of them are, when you come in, there's coffee in here in the morning, right? That smell of coffee. Everybody enjoys the smell. Not all of us enjoy the taste, as my wife will attest that I don't drink enough of it. Another one is, and personally for me, it's in the late evening and harvest. When there's calm out, you can hear the machines running in the background, in the distance, and there's just a bit of dust in the air, and the dew starts to settle in, and there's just that certain smell. It's just like, this is peaceful. This is very enjoyable to be here at this very moment. Another one is, you cut hay. If you've ever been around alfalfa, and you've had a big stand of hay, and you cut it, and you knock it down, and you go later in the evening, again, that dew settles in, and it's just a sweet, sweet smell. You can tell kind of what background I have, kind of things that I enjoy. Bad smells. To give off a bad aroma. Business I was in for many, many years. Cows. Just if you're ever in a field with cows, and they've just been turned into fresh grass, or in the spring, don't stand behind them. At least 20, 30 feet behind if you're going to. You'll be safe that far away. I've had it on me. Pushing calves up into the chutes to be treated in the spring, weighing calves, you get splattered with manure. It's not the most pleasant smell in the world. Another one is, in the business I am now, I deliver chemical into the oil field, and we have 2 chemicals. One smells like a skunk, so you don't want that on you. Another one, I don't know what the real smell is, but when you get one drop on you, it smells with you the whole day. I've had that happen. I got a few spots splattered on me, and I had to take my coveralls off, my clothes off, and wash myself out in the field with some scrubs because it was just that bad. But you have to remember, in my truck I have cameras, so you have to be very strategic where you stand and do this. So I'm going to start off with aroma. In Genesis, right at the very beginning, they had issues with this, so don't feel bad. It's not just us nowadays. This started right at the very beginning. I'll give you an example of both aroma, and then we'll go through bad aroma and then good aroma, and then how we can do this. Genesis 4, 3-7. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of his firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain's as his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. God asked, "Why are you so angry? Why do you look so dejected? You'll be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master." When I read this, and like most of us probably read this story several times, and every time you kind of get something different. And I've never noticed it, and probably because I've never studied it maybe as much as I should have. But it was the two different gifts that were brought and how God accepted each one. What did Cain bring? He brought what he had, right? He just gathered up whatever he had with him. He was the guy that did cropping, so he just gathered up some of his grains to bring. What did Abel bring? He was with the animals. He brought his first and his very best. That's how God differentiates between them, right? And that was something that kind of hit me just when I was going through this. So what God is asking us to do is to make sure we bring our best. Whatever we have to as a sacrifice for us, he wants the best of us. Then he goes on in 6 and 7. And he asks two questions of Cain, and then he answers it right away. He doesn't even give him a chance to answer back. He says, "Why are you so angry? Why do you look so dejected?" I'm sure he knew what he was supposed to do. Abel got it right, so I'm sure his brother at the time would have known what he was supposed to bring as a sacrifice. So why didn't he do it? And then his reaction is, right, he's angry and he's dejected. And that got me thinking, again, about myself. I think everyone should have an opportunity to speak, because I think that's when God works at you the most, because you really have to study yourself before you stand up here and find out what's wrong with yourself before you dare stand up here. And that's what I was going through. And this is what God and I are talking here. And he hit me with this. And times in my life it's been, you think you're doing some of the right things, right? You're bringing the grain, but it's not your best, it's not the firstborn. And then God talks to you and goes, it's not that open communication that you really were hoping for. And it's like, well, why? I did what I thought I was supposed to do. So why don't you accept me? And then I get angry and I get dejected. That's my human nature. It's like, I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. But yet I'm not getting the reaction from God that I want. And you say that I want. So I get angry and I get dejected over that. Get a little bit like Cain. So what are some of the wrong aromas that we talk about, that God talks about, I should say? Ephesians 4, 22 to 32 is a list, and there's some others in Ephesians further on, and also in 5, 3 to 5. Some of the things that I think we don't give off a good smell to God then. And I'll just read it here. Throw off all your old sinful nature and the former way of life, which is corrupt by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. So stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are all parts of the same body. And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to evil, to the devil. If you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good, hard work, and then give generously to others in need. Don't use foolish or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful, so that the words that you will be an encouragement to those who hear them. And do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way you live. Remember, He has identified you as His own, guaranteed that you will be saved on the day of redemption. Get rid of all the bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgive one another, just as God has forgiven you. In Ephesians 3 to 5, let there be no sexual immorality, impurity, or greed among you. Such sins have no place among God's people. Obscene stories, foolish talk, coarse jokes, these are not for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. You can be sure that no immoral, pure, or greedy person will inherit the kingdom of Christ and of God. For a greedy person is an adulterer, worshiping the things of this world. So I got thinking about myself, reading that list. I said, okay, what's in my life that stinks? What do I have that's giving off this smell, this block, this smoke, the smog, whatever you want to call it, between me and God? Because that's kind of what it is. Because God can't be around, right? He can't be around us that close to us in our conversation. He's there. He's never gone. Like the song says, he's always there. He's always loving us. That never changes. It doesn't go away. We do things. When we do things, it makes that surround us with that smoke. I think we need to check ourselves daily, weekly, monthly, minute by minute sometimes, depending on where we're at and what situation we're in. Are we giving off the wrong aroma to God? When I was going through this is the example that hit me. Our kids. Those of us that have kids, you'll know this. As parents, we have rules, right? We want our kids to be safe. We want our kids to be a certain, behave a certain way. We set up rules. There's two ways about it. We want our kids to follow those rules. And when they're inside those rules, right, there's open communication between us and the kids. It's easy to talk to them. They can talk to us. Even if you're a quiet one, their actions tell you things, right? And it's easy. You can have those. But as soon as they step outside your rules, right, there's certain things. It starts to be, your heart as a parent starts to get a little bit sad, right? And you can see what they're doing, is not going to be good for them, but they don't want to stay in the rules. They want to do their own thing. So you can have, the communication starts to break down a little bit more, right? It's just not that freedom between you anymore. And that's the way was the example that God gave me, is that's how from God and myself, that's the way it works, right? When I step outside of his rules over here, right, in the darker part of life and the going through that list and doing things, right, I lose that communication with him until I resolve those issues, my issues, not God's, my issues. I'll have that aroma. I'll be in the dark. And we got to remember too that when we step over into the darker side, when we have that smell, who's waiting for us there? Satan's waiting for us. It says there, he's waiting for us to crouch and ready to pounce and keep us there. Because he knows if he keeps us there, then we can't be in conversation with God and doing what God wants. And that's his goal. He's always wanting to keep us over here, right? Not smelling good to God. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the right aroma. This is the better part. The right aroma. So again, I looked into the Bible again and thought, who are the people in the Bible? Job. Now there's a guy who had, if any person probably in the Bible had the right to complain a little bit, I think he's that guy. He's in probably the top 5, right? He lost everything, flocks, all his hired men in the first go. Second go, he got boils on his skin. He was scraping them off with broken pottery. That cannot be feeling very good. And a lot of other things happened. And this is how God explains them. He is blameless and a man of integrity. Okay, that guy must be doing something right through all of this. Noah, he was on a boat for a year full of animals with only a few people. I'm sure it wasn't that well smelling in there at that point by the time the year was out, even if you crack open the few windows that were on there. God describes him as this. He was a righteous man and the only blameless person. Can you imagine living in a world where, probably 10 or 12 of them at the most, and that's it for Christian people? The amount of pressure that would have been coming from the outside world. Right? Why are you like that? Why are you building a boat in the middle of a desert that hasn't rained for who knows how many years? Right? Like that's the pressure he's under, and God still describes him as a righteous and blameless person. Prophet Micah, he comes to talk to the people of Judea. And he says, "O people, the Lord has told you what is good. This is what he requires of you." And what has happened here, the Judean people have started to drift away and start to do what I'll call kind of just do the religious thing, right? They're doing all the right things, but the relationship is not there, right? So Micah is coming along, and he's telling them this. The end of that verse says, do what is right, to love mercy, and walk humbly with God. So he's telling them, that's all fine. Just like Cain brought in the crop, it's good, but it's not the best. You can go to church, you can go to Sunday school, you can do small groups, you can do those things, but you can still have all these other things over here that you need to deal with. You can do all the right things, but you need to deal with this to get the right aroma, to be able to have conversations with God. Ephesians 4:23 and 24. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. How many times do we do this in our lives? Do we do that? Or do we react like Cain? Do we get dejected and angry? Or do we, when we do things wrong or we don't have the right smell, do we do that? Or do we come back and renew our thoughts and our attitudes? When I was writing this up, I put in big letters here, I wish this was only had to do it once. It would be so much easier. Once in my lifetime, done. Okay, I'm renewed, attitude's right, good to go. Not so. This happens probably sometimes hourly, weekly, right? Same thing again. Got to go through it, depending on your situation. Ephesians 5:1-2 and 10-11. Imitate God. When I was originally doing this, I had in my notes, I said, good, done, service over, right? Imitate God, what else do we need to know, right? Therefore, if everything you do, because you are his dear children, live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Carefully determine what pleases the Lord. Take no part in the worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, expose them. Take no part in worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, expose them. That one there brought me to, we have the things that we keep in ourselves that keep us, that list that we've talked about and others in the Bible there, that consume us sometimes. They will always consume us unless we expose them. And that means giving them to God. But it also means, in what I feel anyways, is you need to have people here. I know Pastor Peter's talked about it in his group of 7 guys that he went away for on a weekend a couple weeks ago. Right? That's exposing. That was an example. When he talked about that, we talked about that earlier a few months ago. And if you want to expose what's really going inside you, and you do it in front of 7 other people, right? There's 7 people that know exactly what's going on in your life. And I think that's basically what he's talking about here, right? We all need that. I think we desire it. I think that's built into us, that we want to tell people because it's easier. Once it's out, it's easier. And when we expose those things to God and get them out in the open, light diffuses darkness, right? Good smell will dissipate that rotten smell. And then God can work with us even closer yet. Ephesians 15-20. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. Don't be drunk with wine, because that will ruin your life. Instead, be filled with the Holy Spirit, singing psalms, hymns, spiritual songs among yourselves, and making music to the Lord in your heart. And give thanks for everything to God the Father, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. I think this verse sums it up fairly nicely and neatly how we are to live our lives so we have a pleasing aroma to God. 19. Sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, and making music to the Lord in your hearts. When I read that over and over again, the one that got me was making these things and making music to the Lord in your heart. This is great. What we did, Brandon led us in, is great. It gets us ready for service. And some people, that part of the service is what they get. Whoever's speaking is not what brings them closer to the Lord. It's the music. Because music is very, very strong. And we need to do those things. But it also says, music to your Lord in your heart. So that means, for me, when I was talking about this and when he was dealing with me about it, is where's my heart at? Right? Am I praising God every day inside? Am I giving off a good aroma to God? Am I making sure I'm right with him? Or is my heart somewhere else? In closing, how do we keep good aroma with God? One, it's examining our life every day, sometimes by the minute, making sure that those things that are blocking our communication, that are giving off a bad aroma, so God can't and us can't have that best communication, just like our kids and us, checking ourselves, making sure we're in the right spot. This is hard. This is not easy. So that means bringing stuff into the light, not leaving it in the darkness. And then filling those spots. I think sometimes we forget about that. Yeah, we expose them, we get them out there, but what do we fill them with? What do we fill our heart with? Do we fill them with songs and hymns, or do we go back to where we were? Because I know I do that. I go back to where I am sometimes, a lot of times. And then you got to redo it again. You go back to the beginning and say, Lord, right? Forgive me. Let's clean this up. Come back again. Human nature. We're not perfect. Ways of changing it. Things that came to me is, right? Who are we spending time with? That doesn't mean we shouldn't spend time with non-Christians. Not at all. But if we're going to build ourselves up to be a better aroma to God, to be who we're supposed to be for God so God can use us, who are we spending our time with to develop our spiritual side? And the last thing, the music team can come up. When we're living our lives both privately and publicly, are we a pleasing aroma to God? That's the question we ask ourselves once we leave these doors. So hopefully what I've spoke about here today will give you some thought, some things to think about, and hopefully, I know it helped me, so I'm hoping it'll help you.